Norfolk, Tom's family homeland way back in 1730 or so. The Mortars of France crossed the seas and became peasant farmers in eastern villages such as Slowly, bringing with them olive skin, short legs, thick eyebrows, and a nose that must surely date back to the Roman Empire. One member of his family, a farmer's boy, married well, the daughter of a lace-maker, and soon moved with the business from Norwich to London. From there, west to the ununited States of America, and finally, after 5 generations, north to Canada, where Bruce Mortar found himself in the arms of his bride, Jan Mortar. Jan Mortar is an accomplished Scrabble player and unwittingly accepted the invitation online to play Words with Friends with a certain cornet player from Kidlington Band, who in turn mistook Jan Mortar of Alberta for Jan Mortar of Abingdon.
Many games were won and lost before the mistake was realised, and the cornet player turned to Jan Mortar of Abingdon to relate the story of Jan Mortar of Words with Friends. A few months later, we all found ourselves, after a few emails and arrangements, in a bar in London. Bruce Mortar and Tom Mortar, 5th cousins, united for the first time, united over their olive skin, short legs, thick eyebrows, and a nose that must date back to the Roman Empire, for sure. We have returned to Norfolk for our 3rd van adventure. It was touch and go, with social services eventually agreeing to make 2 visits a day at our expense to our ancient 4th generation Mortar, son of Robert, son of Stanley, son of a French immigrant from 1730 or so. We had arranged a free night on the drive of some dear friends who we had last seen dancing the night away at the Centre for Music at the 2nd, now biannual reunion of Oxfordshire County Youth Orchestra, only weeks before. I had first met our hostess when I travelled with Tom and Toby, then aged 10 months, by 7-ton lorry, fully loaded with 6 timps, 7 double basses, numerous pieces of percussion, a few tubas, and some boxes of stands, to southern Spain. We'd caught the Portsmouth to Bilbao ferry. The leader hadn't accommodated a 10-month-old in our bunk bed cabin. No room for a cot equals no sleep before a 10-hour drive south. Nothing went wrong except I lost my mind. We have an adorable photograph of our hostess looking adoringly at Toby in his baby walker at breakfast. This picture, however, only tells half the story. The other half is that the last night the hostess partied with the fiesta that was going on all night outside my bedroom window, disappeared for a full 6 hours, and reappeared with bruising on her neck that suggested she and the Spaniard she had disappeared with had been practising the violin all night. I knew she played the double bass, and double bass playing does not give you bruising and Spanish teeth marks on your neck. I think the Spaniard might have been playing her like a double bass. We found our destination with ease and began the backward entry into the driveway using the rear-facing camera and Tom as my guide. The van had to be tight against the wall to allow access for other users of the drive. Have you ever heard the sound of brambles scraping down the side of your husband's newly purchased toy named Max Headroom? Have you ever noticed how the wing mirrors protrude much further than the side of a motorhome? Perhaps you would have noticed the telegraph pole marking the halfway point between boundary and the rear wall. In his youth, my husband sang in choirs and developed his vocal cords for this very moment. I'm sure of it. "Stop!" he sang out with millimetres despair. I slammed the van into first, but "Stop!" came again. "You've got the wheels facing the wrong way." A little bit of left hand down, right hand down, and I was all set for a night next to the Norwich Road. It was a delight to catch up with our old friends, now a doctor, the bass player turned good, and her husband, the YouTuber, the children's youth service worker turned bad. They had met in the orchestra and produced 3 delightful children. After an evening of showing the kids the van and then light drinking, we rose the next morning to shower, etc. in the house. Cheating, I know, but fair exchange for the trumpet lesson received by a poorly middle child who tried to impress me with some songs from the Horrible Histories series on television. I noticed a simple riff, and before you know it, we were playing along. E, D, G, modulating in the last verse. F sharp, E, A. A few verses in, and Hamish was able to anticipate where the riff was coming, breathe deep and blow from his sick chair. Soon Tom joined us on the piano, and it wasn't long before we had his grade 2 tunes out. I told him the story behind the Anvil chorus, and we'd found Verdi's opera Turandot and the Semi-Naked Blacksmiths on YouTube. I earned that shower.
My second encounter with a telegraph pole didn't go so well. We spent a night in a field, 5 pitches, all hookups with wild baby pheasants everywhere, and then headed to see some more friends. This time, Tom's former secretary and my dear friend, and her 3 young girls, now 2, 4.5, and 7. Each time one was born, I dashed up the A11 to hold that fresh newborn baby in my arms. They'd got to know me through our brief encounters, and after school they were allowed to visit us in the pub car park, where we'd taken advantage of the scheme that allows you to park in certain pubs with a view to enjoying their hospitality. We had a jolly little catch-up. I got the girls overexcited, pumped on Coke and crisps, returned them to their mother, screaming and crying that they wanted to see more of Auntie Jan, so I promised to see them in a few days on the beach at Wells by Sea. We left their poor mother to bath and bed them whilst we went for a good hard cycle, and then returned with curry and wine to share with our old friends and have a jolly good catch-up. The next day we headed to the coast to the romantically named Fiddler's Farm. We had intended to stay 2 nights there, but quickly worked out that someone was indeed on the fiddle. £14 to stay on a hillock in the corner of a field in the middle of nowhere. No thank you. And we quickly U-turned and headed towards Wells by Sea, where we hoped to spend the next 3 days playing on the vast beach with other people's children. Eventually we found a quirky site, loos, showers, water hose, toilet emptying facilities. We'd learnt sequencing is important, so before we settled on our pitch, we headed to the water toilet emptying station, past the telegraph pole. It wasn't the telegraph pole that was the problem, it was the 18-inch piece of 2x4 nailed to it, about 8 foot up on the pole. Reversing out, using the backward-facing camera as my guide, I stopped within 8 inches of the telegraph pole. The remaining 1 inch of that 2x4 entered the back of the van, penetrating the fibres, revealing the insulation in a J shape that will mock me for all my days. The scrunching snap was worse than the sound of your own child's ankle bone snapping as he came off a skateboard. The subsequent anguish, tears and sobs are worse than delivering your own child to A&E on a Saturday morning and then having to go back to work to teach other people's children. Worse also than the cries of your youngest as he snaps his wrist falling off the monkey bars owned by the town council, installed by a committee that I sat on. Worse than the anguish of watching your child be put to sleep as his wrist is pinned back together so weeks later he can balance his trombone on a pole and play that Hindemith solo in the Albert Hall. The van is 9 days old and has its very first flesh wound. Sorry, Max Headroom.